The warehouse was freezing in winter and suffocating in summer, and I'd spent the last 5 years pretending that was my entire world. I started working at Chin Logistics when I was 23, fresh out of college with a business degree nobody in my family took seriously. Not because they didn't value education, they did, obsessively, but because I'd gone to state school instead of the private universities my siblings attended. Community college with delusions of grandeur. My older brother Kevin called it at my graduation party. He'd gone to Northwestern. My sister Jennifer went to Boston College. Both had graduated with honors, internships at prestigious firms and job offers waiting. I'd graduated with $60,000 in student loans, 3 part-time jobs on my resume, and a 3.9 GPA that nobody mentioned because it wasn't from the right school. When I asked Dad about working at the family company, he'd been uncomfortable. We don't really have positions for entry-level people right now. Maybe in a few years when you've got some real experience. Kevin was made regional sales manager the day after his graduation. He had 0 experience. Jennifer became marketing director 6 months after her graduation. Also 0 experience. But they were the golden children. The ones who'd gone to the right schools, knew the right people, fit the family image. I was the afterthought. The youngest child who'd disappointed everyone by being average in a family of supposed excellence. You could work in the warehouse, Mom suggested finally, like she was offering me charity. We need reliable people for inventory and shipping. It's honest work. Not everyone is cut out for management. I took the job because I needed income to start paying loans. Minimum wage plus a tiny family discount. No benefits because I was part-time, despite working 45 hours a week. Chin Logistics was a regional shipping and warehousing company my grandfather started in 1982. By the time I joined, it was doing about $50 million in annual revenue with 200 employees across 4 facilities. Respectable. Profitable. Not spectacular. Dad ran it with an iron fist and an outdated management style. Mom handled HR and finance with a spreadsheet system from 1997. Kevin was supposed to be bringing in new clients but mostly played golf. Jennifer created marketing materials that looked expensive but generated minimal leads. They were coasting on Grandpa's legacy and long-time client relationships. The industry was changing, e-commerce fulfillment, last-mile delivery, supply chain automation, but Chin Logistics was stuck in the past. I could see it from the warehouse floor. Inefficient routing. Outdated inventory systems. Missed opportunities with emerging e-commerce clients who needed flexible fulfillment partners. But I was just the warehouse guy. Nobody asked for my opinions. I loaded trucks. I organized inventory. I processed shipping orders. I came in early, stayed late, worked weekends. I did my job and kept my mouth shut. And I invested every spare dollar I earned. My roommate from college, Marcus, worked in venture capital. We'd stayed close after graduation and he saw potential in me that my family never did. "You've got good instincts," he told me over beers one night. "That analysis you did of the logistics industry? That was partner-level thinking. You're wasted in that warehouse." "It's a job," I said. "It pays the bills." "Barely. What if I could show you how to make your money work harder?" Marcus introduced me to index fund investing. Taught me about compound interest, dollar cost averaging, long-term growth strategies. I started putting $500 a month into diversified investments. It wasn't much, but it was consistent. Then I got lucky. A tiny biotech startup that Marcus's firm passed on. Too risky, too early stage, caught my attention. I read their research papers. Understood their technology. Saw the potential in their approach to targeted cancer therapy. I invested $5,000. It was almost everything I had saved. 18 months later, they announced breakthrough trial results. The stock went from $3 per share to $87 per share. My $5,000 became $145,000. I diversified immediately. Put most of it into stable index funds and bonds. Used $30,000 for calculated risks on emerging tech companies. 2 failed completely. 1 tripled. Another went up 600%. By my 3rd year in the warehouse, I had $890,000 in my portfolio. By year 4, I'd crossed $2.1 million. I kept working at the warehouse. Kept loading trucks. Kept living in my modest apartment. Drove the same beat-up Honda Civic. Wore the same work boots. Nobody knew. Not Marcus, not my roommate, not my family. especially not my family. Because during year 4 something interesting happened. Chin Logistics hit a rough patch. A major client went bankrupt owing them $800,000. 2 key accounts switched to competitors with better technology. An expensive warehouse expansion in Ohio failed to attract enough business. Dad needed capital. Fast. The banks were hesitant. The company's debt-to-equity ratio was already high. Cash flow was tight. They'd approve a loan but at punishing interest rates. Dad's attorney suggested bringing in a silent partner. Someone who'd invest capital in exchange for equity but wouldn't interfere with operations. A passive investor. Dad hated the idea of outside ownership but had no choice. He needed $3 million to cover debts, fund operations and avoid layoffs. His attorney found a private investment firm willing to structure the deal. Redwood Capital Partners would invest $3 million for a 75% equity stake. Dad and the family would retain 25% ownership and complete operational control. It was a terrible deal from a valuation standpoint. Chin Logistics was worth at least $25 million, probably more. Dad was essentially giving away 75% of a $25 million company for $3 million. But he was desperate and Redwood knew it. I watched the family meeting where they discussed it. I wasn't invited, obviously, but I overheard it while restocking supplies near the conference room. "We don't have a choice," Dad said grimly. "It's take the deal or close 2 facilities and lay off 70 people." "Who is this Redwood Capital anyway?" Jennifer asked. "Some private equity firm. The lawyer vetted them. They're legitimate. And more importantly, they're willing to wire the money immediately." "Do we have to tell them anything about operations?" Kevin asked nervously. He'd just lost the company's 3rd biggest account through sheer incompetence. "No. The contract stipulates silent partnership. They get quarterly financial statements and dividends when profitable, but zero operational input. We maintain complete control." "When do we sign?" Mom asked. "Friday. The lawyer's drawing up final paperwork." That was Tuesday. On Wednesday morning, I walked into a private wealth management office in downtown Chicago. I'd done extensive research. Found a boutique firm that specialized in anonymous investment structures for high-net-worth clients. "I need to create an investment vehicle," I told the attorney. "Something that can make corporate investments without revealing my identity." "How much are we talking about?" he asked. $3 million. Immediate deployment." He didn't even blink. "We can structure an LLC with layered holdings. Your name never appears on any documentation. The investment flows through corporate entities. Completely legal, completely private. How fast can you set it up?" "For a client with $3 million liquid? By tomorrow afternoon." "Do it." By Thursday evening, Redwood Capital Partners LC was registered in Delaware with me as the sole beneficial owner through a trust structure so complex it would take forensic accountants weeks to unravel. On Friday morning, Redwood Capital Partners wired $3 million to Chin Logistics in exchange for 75% equity ownership. My family had no idea they'd just sold their company to me. The contract was beautifully simple. I provided capital. They maintained operations. I received quarterly financials and 75% of any distributions or sale proceeds. They needed my approval for any major corporate actions. Mergers, acquisitions, asset sales over $500,000, changes in capital structure. Dad signed the papers with visible relief. The money hit the company account the same day. I kept loading trucks. Over the next year, I watched from the warehouse floor as my family ran their company. They made terrible decisions with newfound confidence. Kevin bought himself a Mercedes with his performance bonus after a quarter where revenue actually declined. Jennifer renovated her office with $40,000 in designer furniture because brand image matters. Mom hired her unqualified friend as assistant HR director at an inflated salary. Dad bought a vacation condo in Florida as a company retreat property that only the family ever used. They were treating the capital injection like free money, not understanding they diluted themselves into minority ownership. I said nothing. I loaded trucks. I watched. I documented everything. The company stabilized but didn't grow. Same old clients, same old problems, same old management thinking. They'd survived the crisis but learned nothing from it. Then last month everything changed. Midwest Freight Solutions, a major regional competitor, approached Dad about a merger. They wanted to combine operations, consolidate facilities, and create a dominant regional logistics player. Their offer: $45 million for Chin Logistics. Dad, Mom, Kevin, and Jennifer would receive executive positions in the merged company with generous compensation packages. The Chin Logistics name would be retained for brand recognition. It was a phenomenal offer. Way above market value. Midwest Freight clearly saw strategic value in our client relationships and facility locations. Dad called a family meeting to discuss it. A family meeting. I was in the warehouse 30 feet away when it started. Through the conference room's glass walls, I could see them all gathered around the table. Dad at the head, Mom to his right, Kevin and Jennifer on the sides. A lawyer I didn't recognize. An accountant. And conspicuously no seat for me. I continued my work, organizing inventory near enough to hear occasional phrases. Incredible opportunity. Secured our legacy. Finally getting recognized. Kevin's voice carried clearly. This is what happens when you have real business leadership. The company's value has never been higher. Jennifer laughed. Remember when we were worried about that silent partner situation? Turns out we didn't need them at all. We turned things around ourselves. I kept scanning barcodes, expressionless. The meeting went on for 2 hours. I could see champagne being opened. Congratulatory handshakes. Dad hugging Mom. Kevin and Jennifer taking selfies. Finally, they started to disperse. As Kevin walked past the warehouse area, he called out to me. "Hey, Tommy. Come here a sec." I walked over. "Yeah. Just wanted to let you know. Big change is coming. Company's being acquired. Don't worry, your job's safe. The new ownership wants to keep the warehouse staff." "That's good," I said neutrally. "Yeah, we made sure to protect our people. That's what family does." He grinned. "This is a $45 million deal. Biggest thing to happen to Chin Logistics in decades. Dad's legacy is secure." "Congratulations," I said. "Thanks. Keep up the good work with those trucks." He walked away, already on his phone, probably texting friends about his windfall. I went back to work. That evening, I received an email from Dad. First one he'd sent me in probably 2 years. "Tommy, as you may have heard, Chin Logistics is being acquired by Midwest Freight Solutions. This is a tremendous opportunity for the company and the family. Your position will be unaffected. We appreciate your hard work." Dad. Formal. Distant. Telling me my job was unaffected, like that was the extent of my concern. No mention of the fact that I'd worked there for 5 years. No acknowledgement of the countless weekends I'd covered shifts when others called out. No recognition that I was family too. I forwarded the email to my attorney. "They're proceeding with a sale," I wrote. "Contract requires my approval for transactions over $500,000. Please inform them." His response came in minutes. "We'll send formal notification first thing tomorrow morning. This should be interesting." The next day was the quarterly business review meeting. These happened 4 times a year, formal presentations of financial performance for the board and stakeholders. I'd never been invited to one. I wasn't management. I wasn't important. But this one was special. The Midwest Freight representatives were attending. Final deal terms were being reviewed. Paperwork was being prepared for signature. I was in the warehouse working my regular shift. Around 10 a.m., I heard raised voices from the conference room. Unusual. These meetings were typically boring affairs. PowerPoint presentations, revenue charts, polite applause. This sounded like panic. 20 minutes later, Dad stormed into the warehouse. His face was red, his expression somewhere between fury and confusion. "Tommy. My office. Now." I set down the box I was holding. "Is something wrong?" "Just come with me." I followed him through the facility. Workers watched us pass. The warehouse guy being summoned by the CO was unusual enough to draw attention. Dad's office was in chaos. Mom was there looking stricken. Kevin paced nervously. Jennifer sat with her head in her hands. The lawyer and accountant both looked uncomfortable. 2 people in expensive suits, presumably from Midwest Freight, sat with carefully neutral expressions. And a woman I'd never seen before holding a leather portfolio. "Sit down," Dad said tersely. I sat. Dad gestured to the woman with the portfolio. This is Catherine Rodriguez, representing Redwood Capital Partners. Apparently there's a problem with the acquisition. Catherine smiled professionally at me. We'd never met in person. All our communication had been through secure channels and encrypted email, but she knew exactly who I was. Mr. Chin, she said, addressing Dad, as I've explained, the operating agreement you signed 5 years ago requires approval from the majority stakeholder for any sale or transfer of company assets exceeding $500,000. Redwood Capital Partners owns 75% of Chin Logistics. Therefore, this proposed acquisition cannot proceed without Redwood's explicit written consent. This is a formality, Dad said dismissively. You're a silent partner. You'll approve anything that generates returns. This deal benefits everyone. That may be true, Catherine replied calmly. However, the legal requirement stands. Redwood's approval must be obtained before any sale can be finalized. One of the Midwest freight representatives spoke up. Our offer is time-sensitive. We need all approvals within 7 business days or we'll pursue other acquisition targets. Then get them on the phone. Kevin demanded. Call Redwood and get approval. How hard is this? Catherine's smile didn't waver. Redwood prefers to handle such decisions through in-person consultation. The principal stakeholder is actually here today. Everyone looked at her blankly. What do you mean here? Mom asked. I mean present. In this room. The silence was absolute. Dad's face went from red to white. What are you talking about? Catherine looked directly at me. Redwood Capital Partners is a holding company. The beneficial owner and principal decision-maker is Tommy Chin. I watched the information hit them in stages. Confusion first. Dad's brow furrowed. That's impossible. Tommy works in the warehouse. Tommy Chin is the sole owner of Redwood Capital Partners, Catherine continued professionally. He invested $3 million 5 years ago in exchange for 75% equity in Chin Logistics. He is the majority stakeholder. This acquisition requires his approval. Jennifer laughed. It was a nervous, disbelieving sound. This is a joke. Tommy doesn't have $3 million. He lives in a studio apartment. He drives a 15-year-old Honda. Mr. Chen's personal financial situation is his own business, Catherine said. But I can confirm his ownership is fully documented and legally unassailable. Kevin stood up abruptly. This is insane. There's no way Tommy has been the silent partner this whole time. He loads trucks. And owns 75% of the company you're trying to sell, Catherine added calmly. The accountant, who'd been frantically typing on his laptop, looked up with a pale face. Mr. Chin, I've pulled the original partnership agreement. The ownership structure it's accurate. Redwood Capital Partners holds 75% equity. And the Delaware corporate records show. He swallowed. They show Thomas Chin as the beneficial owner through a trust structure. Dad turned to me slowly. For the first time in 5 years, maybe in my entire life, he really looked at me. Not through me, not past me, but at me. Tommy, he said slowly. Is this true? I met his eyes. Yes. You own 75% of this company? Yes. For 5 years? Yes. You've been working in the warehouse while owning most of the company? Yes. Mom's voice was barely a whisper. How? Where did you get $3 million? I invested wisely. Made good decisions. Took calculated risks. The money came from various successful investments over several years. Kevin was shaking his head. No. No way. You went to state school. You work minimum wage. You're not capable of. Of what? I asked quietly. Of being smarter than you assumed? Of having skills you never bothered to notice? Of succeeding while you dismissed me as irrelevant? Why didn't you tell us? Jennifer demanded. Why would I? You never asked about my life. Never showed interest in what I was doing. You assumed I was a failure because I didn't follow your path. You were content to let me stay in the warehouse while you played executive in a company I mostly owned. Dad sank into his chair. All these years you treated me like I was worthless, I said, my voice still calm. Do you know what you said at my graduation? Jennifer said my degree was from community college with delusions of grandeur. Kevin called me the family disappointment. Dad told me I wasn't cut out for management. Mom suggested the warehouse because not everyone is leadership material. We didn't mean, Mom started. You meant every word. And you've spent 5 years proving it. You've run this company into the ground while I bailed you out with my money. You've made terrible decisions, wasted resources, hired unqualified friends, bought luxury items with company funds, and congratulated yourselves on surviving a crisis you never understood you'd already lost control of. The Midwest Freight representatives were watching with visible discomfort. One cleared his throat. Perhaps we should give the family privacy to discuss this? No, I said. You should stay. You need to understand the situation too. I turned to Catherine. What happens to their deal if I refuse approval? The acquisition cannot proceed. Midwest Freight withdraws their offer. Chin Logistics continues under current ownership structure, which means you retain 75% equity and they retain 25%. And if I approve? The sale proceeds according to ownership percentages. You receive 75% of the $45 million purchase price. The family receives 25%. I did the math out loud. So I would receive $33.75 million. The family would receive $11.25 million, split among the 4 of them. Roughly $2.8 million each. That's correct, Catherine confirmed. Kevin's face had gone from red to purple. You're going to take $33 million of our family company's sale? It's not your family company, I said simply. It's my company. You own 25%. I own 75%. That's how equity works. This is theft. Jennifer shouted. You manipulated the situation. You took advantage when we were desperate. I provided capital when you needed it, I corrected. You signed a contract. You agreed to the terms. You just never bothered to investigate who you were signing with. Dad's voice was hollow. Why did you do this? Do what? Invest in a struggling business? Save 200 jobs? Keep the company afloat while you played executive? Or do you mean why did I do it secretly? Why didn't I announce that the son you stuck in the warehouse had become more successful than everyone at this table combined? Yes, Dad said quietly. Why didn't you tell us? I looked at each of them in turn. Because you wouldn't have believed me. Or you would have found a way to take credit. Or you would have resented me even more than you already did. Because the only thing worse than being the family failure is being the family member who succeeded without permission. We never wanted you to fail, Mom said, tears forming. You never wanted me to succeed either, I replied. You wanted me to stay in my lane. Do my job. Not make waves. Be grateful for the scraps you threw me. The room was silent except for the hum of the air conditioning. So what happens now? Dad asked. I looked at Catherine. She knew my decision. We discussed it yesterday after I received Dad's email. I'm approving the sale, I said. Relief flooded their faces. However, I continued, I have conditions. The relief disappeared. What conditions? Kevin asked warily. First, the executive positions offered to you as part of the merger deal? I'm declining those on behalf of family members. You'll receive your 25% of the sale proceeds, but you won't be employed by the merged company. You can't do that. Jennifer protested. I can. I'm the majority stakeholder. And I've reviewed your performance over the past 5 years. Kevin has lost 3 major accounts through incompetence. Jennifer's marketing has generated minimal ROI. You've both treated this company like a personal piggy bank. Midwest Freight deserves better leadership. What about the rest of us? Dad asked. The employees? I'm negotiating employment protections for all non-family staff. Everyone in this warehouse who's worked harder than any of you will keep their jobs with improved benefits. You're punishing us, Mom said. No. I'm holding you accountable. For the first time in your lives, there are consequences for treating people as disposable. I stood up. The sale will proceed. Catherine will handle all negotiations on my behalf. You'll receive your $11.25 million. I suggest you use it wisely because you won't be getting any more from me. Where are you going? Dad asked. Back to work. I have trucks to load. Tommy, wait, Mom started. No. We're done here. You have your answer. The deal goes forward. You get your money. And after this we have nothing more to discuss. I walked to the door. As I opened it, Kevin's voice stopped me. You think you're better than us? I turned back. No, Kevin. I don't think I'm better than you. I know I'm different from you. I know that when I had power over people who dismissed me, I still made the choice that protected their livelihoods. You would have never done the same for me. We're family, Jennifer said desperately. No, I replied quietly. You were my family. I was never yours. There's a difference. I walked out of the office, through the facility, back to the warehouse floor. My coworkers looked at me curiously. They'd seen me summoned to the executive level. Seen me return. Everything okay? My supervisor asked. Everything's fine, I said. Just some paperwork to sort out. I picked up where I'd left off. Scanning boxes. Loading pallets. Doing my job. An hour later, Dad appeared in the warehouse. He looked 20 years older than he had that morning. Tommy, he said. Can we talk? Really talk? No. Please. I need to understand. I need to explain. There's nothing to explain, Dad. You treated me like I didn't matter for 28 years. The only reason you want to talk now is because you just discovered I have something you need. That's not a relationship. That's a transaction. I was wrong, he said. We were all wrong. About you. About everything. Yes, you were. And now you're going to have to live with that. What happens after the sale closes? You get your money. I get mine. We go our separate ways. You're really done with us? I've been done with you for years, Dad. I just made it official today. He stood there for a long moment, then nodded slowly and walked away. The sale closed 3 weeks later. I received $33.75 million. After taxes, I netted about $23 million. The family received their $11.25 million. They didn't thank me. They didn't apologize. They sent a formal letter through their attorney requesting I sign away my claims to future family assets. I signed it happily. I wanted nothing from them. I quit the warehouse job. Didn't give notice, just stopped showing up. Sent Dad an email. I resign. Effective immediately. Thanks for the 5 years of character development. I used the money to start my own investment fund focused on emerging logistics technology. Invested in companies developing AI-driven supply chain solutions, autonomous delivery systems, sustainable packaging. I'm 31 now. My fund manages $200 million in assets. I employ 15 people and I know all their names, their families, their goals. I bought a house in Lincoln Park. Drive a Tesla. Travel frequently. Date someone wonderful who thinks it's hilarious that I used to load trucks in a company I mostly owned. Last month, Kevin reached out via LinkedIn. Hey man, can we talk? I'm starting a consulting business and could use some investment capital. I deleted the message. Jennifer tried calling last week. Left a voicemail asking if I'd be interested in reconnecting and possibly discussing business opportunities. I didn't call back. Mom sends cards on holidays. Generic ones from the store. She signs them "Love Mom," but they feel obligatory. Dad hasn't contacted me at all. Sometimes I wonder if they ever really understood what happened. If they grasped that the son they stuck in the warehouse became the person who saved their company, made them millionaires and then walked away from them forever. Probably not. But it doesn't matter anymore. I learned everything I needed to know in that warehouse. I learned that hard work matters more than fancy degrees. That quiet competence beats loud arrogance. That the people who dismiss you often don't see their own obsolescence coming. And I learned that family isn't about blood or surnames or who gets invited to quarterly meetings. It's about who sees your value when you have nothing to prove it. My family never saw mine. So I built a new one. And this time I chose people who actually wanted me there. The warehouse was freezing in winter and suffocating in summer, but it taught me more about business, resilience, and human nature than any business school ever could. It taught me that sometimes the person loading the trucks owns the whole damn company. And sometimes that's the sweetest revenge of all.